And welcome back, everybody. It's the Return of the King, the Return of the Jedi, whichever you prefer. Because I'm back. It's been a long time coming, but the best Grey Boy, your favorite Grey Boy, Brennan, is finally back. Uh, for a light podcast today, to be fair, unfortunately. But the good news is, I'm going to get this out of the way first. The plan is for me to actually start doing some reviews and gameplay of some games within the next few weeks to months. Some are new games, some are older games. It's going to be a nice mix, and I hope you enjoy them. Just to give you an idea, some of the games I'm going to be doing are an old one, Alien Isolation, a new one, the Mass Effect trilogy, which is something completely new to me. I've never played them before. Old would be Resident Evil 2 remake and Resident Evil 3, and then I guess new would be Resident Evil 7 and 8. These, just for examples of games I'm going to play. And I'm sure we'll get more down the line, especially whenever PlayStation and Discord link up. That's going to be pretty cool. But anyway, on the subject of video games, I just want to briefly talk about today my personal hopefuls that we'll see at E3 this year. If you don't know, E3 is an annual event where basically all the different video game companies come together and basically just promote what they have upcoming, whether it's something coming out later that year, years from now, a year from now. A lot of these different companies started doing their own ones, like Nintendo has recently been doing Nintendo Directs where they don't even have to go to E3. I forget if they're actually going to be there this year, or if they're going to do their own Nintendo Direct separately the same weekend. But regardless, I'm just going to get into now what I hope to see the weekend of E3 2021. First off, I hope to get some more news and information about Halo Infinite. Halo Infinite is coming out later this fall/winter on Xbox Series S, I believe Xbox One, and PC, which is the version I'm going to be getting. I don't have the newer Xbox systems. I'm very excited because I did see they talked about recently how they're actually kind of making Infinite as if it were meant for the PC, which I'm really excited for to see how that works. We've already gotten a lot so far. I give 343 Industries a lot of credit. They've been keeping the fans up to date on, just where they are, what's going on in terms of multiplayer, the campaign. But, an event like E3 can give them a 10 to 20 plus minute block where everything is on them and they can do a full update. Here we are. Here's our updates on multiplayer. Here's some, for the first time ever, multiplayer footage. Here's a new trailer for the campaign. And hopefully we get an actual release date. There's not one yet. I heard something, a lot of people think it's going to be around October 11th to October 15th, something like that. That would be great. Even if it was a little later, like November, I think that would be good too, because that's going to be perfect. That time of year is, getting parents ready for, Christmas and I guess Thanksgiving too. So they're going to get a lot of money around that time of year. And I'm just really excited for that game. We'll get the one out of the way I don't expect to see out of the two, mainly because its update is coming out June 10th, and like I said, E3 is from June 12th to June 15th. But I'd love to hear more information on Final Fantasy VII in regards to Part 2 of the remake. I anticipate next to nothing about, the actual Part 2 of the game, because the Yuffie DLC along with the PS5 upgrades are coming out on June 10th. So I would imagine, for those couple of weeks, maybe even month or two, that Square, at least for that game, is going to be quiet. They're going to say, hey, we got other stuff we want to show you. We're not going to talk about 7 Remake, but it's going well. In terms of Final Fantasy VII, they might actually talk about their 2 upcoming phone games, if I remember correctly, the Battle Royale and the Final Fantasy VII phone game that covers all Final Fantasy stuff, including like Crisis Core and the movie too. Somehow they're gonna incorporate all that into a phone game, which is very odd, but who knows? I'm gonna try both for sure. But staying on topic of Final Fantasy, I do hope that we get more information about Final Fantasy 16. We got our first glimpse of Final Fantasy 16. I want to say like January, February of this year. It hasn't been that long, but like I said, E3 is a perfect opportunity for Square to be like, hey, here's another trailer for it. Here's a brief scenario of what the world is like, what the story is, who these characters are. And by the way, we anticipate the game coming out, the fall of this year, the winter of whatever year. I don't think it'll come out this fall or winter. I'd be amazed if it did, if they, just never really talked about it. And basically between the first teaser and the actual game is in the same year. I'd be shocked. More likely we'll see it this time next year or fall 2022. But, Square has a long history of keeping games delayed. It took them like 7-8 years to get Final Fantasy 15 out. And it was called a different game before it even, even hit the shelves. And of course, Kingdom Hearts 3, it took them like 6-7 years from the time they actually announced it was in development to the day it came out. So in terms of that franchise, I don't expect anything this year for E3. I think it's going to be pretty quiet. We got our Kingdom Hearts 3 DLC about a year and a half ago. I'm not saying that's worth, a year and a half of like quiet. But they said next year is going to be, with next year being the 20th anniversary of the franchise, of the first game, the creative director, Tetsuya Nomura, said like, hey, we plan on giving you a lot of information next year. So I'd be surprised if they talked about anything. If they talk about anything this year, it would probably be some type of like small DLC for the most recent game, Melody of Memory, which is a music game, a rhythm game. Maybe if they want to add another small DLC to talk about, to show where the series is moving forward, because the end of that game kind of gave a glimpse of what's happening. So I don't know if they want to have a DLC like, hey, here's 25 songs we didn't, release the first time. And with these 25 songs comes this and that, and, you get 20, 30 minutes more of cutscenes, something like that. If they did that, I'd consider getting it, but I don't know. And I don't think they're going to talk about their phone game, which I never got into, but I think that phone game is like officially dead. If it's not dead now, it'll be dead weeks from now. So it's probably going to be quiet for Kingdom Hearts, but that's what I expect. So I guess the hope would be, they talk about anything Kingdom Hearts. And if they don't, that's totally fine. What else? So, like I said, Nintendo may or may not be doing their own thing. I forget if they're actually going to be at E3. Although I guess they can't be there. I think the whole thing is technically virtual. There might be some in-person stuff, but it'll be very limited. But there's definitely some Nintendo stuff I hope to see. The biggest of which would be any form of information for the Breath of the Wild sequel. Now, Nintendo had a direct a few months back where they talked about Skyward Sword, which will be coming out sometime this summer, which is a remake of a Nintendo Wii game for the Nintendo Switch. So they focused on that a few months ago, and the heads of the Zelda development team, they said, hey, we have nothing for Breath of the Wild now, but we will be talking about it later this year. I'm hoping that when he said later this year, he was referring to E3, because it's been, if I'm not mistaken, by the time E3 comes around, it'll have been 3 years since we got our first footage, our first look at the Breath of the Wild sequel, and there's been nothing since then. So it's long overdue. If it's not 3 years, it's 2 years, and even that is a long time to get no form of update, not even like leaks. So that's been a little rough, but fingers crossed, we get something out of that. Also from Nintendo, this is much more wishful thinking because there's been no word of this, but I would absolutely go bananas if Nintendo was like, hey, we are now in development of Super Mario Odyssey 2. Because that is probably my favorite Mario game. It was fantastic. It was so much fun. I need to play it again soon. I've wanted a DLC or a sequel to that ever since I played it. and they haven't really done that. They added a couple of little things like the Luigi balloon races and stuff, but I don't even count that. They need to if they're smart, they'll at least consider making a sequel, because I think they could do really well just creating more worlds, especially with the just the the gameplay with using Cappy the hat was so clever, and it really changed the way you could play a Mario game. If you haven't before, just right now while you're listening to me, open up another tab and look up videos of Super Mario Odyssey speedruns. The way these guys and girls just like jump up, do the hat throw, zip, jump, it's insane. I couldn't do it if I practiced it for months, and they do it like that. It's wild. And then I guess lastly from Nintendo, off the top of my head, I'd love to see more info on the Legend of Arceus, I believe is how you pronounce it, the upcoming open world Pokemon game. I think that I'm really excited for. When they announced those 3 games where it was new Pokemon Snap, Brilliant Diamond, Shining Pearl, and Legend of Arceus, I was super down for new Pokemon Snap. And I am loving it, by the way. It's so much fun. I might talk about that once I finish it. Diamond and Pearl, I have nothing against it. It's just not something I'm eager to play. I never played it before. I might try it. But I'm really interested in open world Pokemon. I think it could be absolutely incredible if all goes well with it. So I'm hoping that they could say, hey, this is what's going on with it. This is where we're at. I think they said early 2022 already. It just, it'd be cool if they're like, oh, it'll hit the shelves like January 25th or February, whatever. You get the idea. And then, to a lesser extent, games I don't anticipate to see, but again would hope to see, would be for Star Wars. I think the only one I could think of that's upcoming would be a possible sequel to Jedi Fallen Order. Because that was a fun game. That's one of my few games I platinumed on the PlayStation. It was a bit of a pain, but it was worth it. Cool to be one of 2 now Star Wars games I've platinumed. That and Republic Commando, which came out last month, and that was a blast. I'd be down to get a sequel. Just it's been a few years, so just imagine the improvement in graphics, the improvement in gameplay, and there's plenty of ways they can go with Cal's story. Maybe they give it an end where he actually dies. Maybe they explain, hey, this is where he is during, the original trilogy. This is why we never saw him. This is why he's not in Rebels. You get the idea. But it could be done very well and very cool. Other games would be, in a perfect world, I think it's Insomniac would say, hey, you like Spider-Man, Miles Morales, we're working on Spider-Man 2. That would be fantastic. Yeah, that's all I got to say. It would be awesome. Another game I platinumed, and if they made a sequel, I'm going to platinum that. Elder Scrolls, I think 6. That's another one that trailer came out like 3, if not 4 years ago now. If I remember correctly, even when Xbox and Bethesda had their big merge recently, there was no talk on that. There was no like, hey, here it comes. It's coming out in 2 years. There was nothing. So if they show up to E3, I'd like to think they're going to actually talk about it. Even if they don't show anything, they should at least let people know what's going on with it. Because that's, Skyrim is still one of the most popular games ever. Just knowing that there's a game that follows it up, even if it's not an actual sequel, will make so much money. And then I'd say lastly, another one I don't at all anticipate, but would like to see would be Overwatch 2. Overwatch 2, Blizzard did a thing on that recently where they kind of talked about where they're at in the game. I don't think that game's coming out a minimum another year, if not more. I think they're just like so far back on that. They don't know what's going on with it. But I'd just be down for them to say, hey, it's coming out this month of this year. That'd be cool. Other than that, we'll see what comes out. Of course, there's other games I'm thinking I'd like to see. They're not, coming to my head right now. But you get those 10 or so are the ones I'd most like to see, whether it be a trailer, an announcement, a release date, something. And that would make my E3 pretty solid if I got something out of that. On that note, I'm going to say adios, farewell, sayonara, and keep your eye out for some B grade gaming coming soon. Until then, see ya.